Hey guys, welcome to the October 2015 edition of Casual MTG here on the Misthollow Magic channel. This is a monthly series where I talk about some of the weirder decks I've built that are fun to play and are mostly kitchen table decks rather than like decks you want to take to Friday Night Magic unless you really want to weird out your opponent. This deck is probably the weirdest of all the decks I've featured so far, although the Living Lore deck was a little weird. This is probably even weirder. The decks in this series are all, pretty budget decks, and this deck is also, but it has a number of mythics in it. So that tells you that the mythics that are in it aren't especially good or sought after. So this deck sort of, there are synergies between these mythics that make them work better than they would normally. And the mythics we have are Scob Ruinator, who they're all less than $1 a piece, incidentally. Molten-Tail Manticore is another one. It's an 18-cent mythic, so that's pretty good. But the Ruinator is about 75 cents. Before the video's over, I'll show you what the whole deck costs. But the Ruinator has to exile cards from my graveyard to be cast, and it can be played from my graveyard. So this deck does like to throw cards in the graveyard for various reasons. And then we also have Misthollow Griffin and Torrent Elemental, both of which can come into play from exile. And both Scob Ruinator and Molten-Tail Manticore exile things from my graveyard, as do Murderous Cut and Gurmag Angler. So that's sort of what we're going for. Those are the ways to exile the Griffin and the Torrent Elemental. Once I exile them, it's basically like they're in my hand. So I get even more value out of exiling them if I do that. Because, it's like having an extra card in my hand, even if it's, not the most exciting, 4-mana, 3/3 flyer isn't that great. Torrent Elemental is a little better, I think, because it can tap down all of my opponent's creatures and help me win. But yeah, those are the ways to exile our Misthollow Griffin and our Torrent Elemental, and they're both pretty effective creatures if you can do that between Molten-Tail Manticore and Scob Ruinator and Gurmag Angler. Additionally, we have various ways to throw cards in our graveyard, of course. We run 4 Merfolk Looters, which draws us a card and then discards a card. Thought Courier, which does the same thing, just has a different creature type. Ideas Unbound, which draws us 3, and then we discard 3 at the end step. Forbidden Alchemy, which lets us choose a card from the top 4 of our library and put it in our hand. Throws the rest in our graveyard. It also has Flashback for when that's relevant. Monastery Siege, which lets us loot every turn. We've seen the Ruinators already. And yeah, that's basically the whole deck. It just sort of is centered around trying to exile Misthollow Griffin and Torrent Elemental with various effects, while playing, big threats like Scob Ruinator, Molten-Tail Manticore, and Gurmag Angler, and, constantly bringing these back into play. I have a sideboard here, Duress, to deal with spell-heavy decks, Zombie Infestation to use against people where I feel like I need more blockers. Big Game Hunter is pretty good against some opponents. I discard a lot of cards, so he'll be able to be cast for Madness a lot of the time. Crux of Fate if I feel like I need a board sweeper. Tombstalker if I want another big flying finisher that has Delve. Dead Drop for against opponents where it's better than Murderous Cut. And then 2 Bojuka Bogs to deal with Reanimators. I can also use this on myself to basically put Misthollow Griffin and Torrent Elemental into my hand, but it also has some, anti-synergy with my other exile effects that need stuff in my graveyard anyway. So that's the deck, basically. It's a pretty simple deck, despite, how weird it is. And now I will show you what it costs. And what it costs is about 16 tickets. Like I said, the mythics in it aren't very expensive. The most expensive thing in the deck, as is the case normally in Modern, is Drowned Catacomb and Underground River, or, the lands are expensive. Yeah, and the mythics, you can get Torrent Elementals, 4 of them for barely over $1, 4 Manticores for 50 cents, 4 Ruinators for $3, and so forth. So mythics or not, they're pretty cheap. So that's the deck. I'll play a few matches with it now so you can see what kind of weird stuff it does. And thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.